Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Congressman Kelly Armstrong joins us now. Good to have him with us. Congressman, good to have you on News and Views, sir.
Hi, how you doing, Joel?
I'm doing well. It's Friday, right? I mean, that's supposed to still mean something, isn't it?
Well, I lose track of hours, let alone days out here. So.
I bet. It's got to feel good to be on that plane coming back. Want to talk to you about what's going on out there. You were asked to serve on the committee that was going to take a look at what happened January 6th. Speaker Pelosi didn't want two of the five that Leader McCartney had said, here's my five, and she didn't allow two on, and then you all pulled the pin. So the question that needs to be asked of you is why? Wasn't it worth your time to do it?
So I think she should have appointed all five. I've told you this before. If asked, I said I would serve. I've also been pretty clear. I don't think not participating, I think, was a mistake prior to all of this happening. I stand by all of those statements. But also, as minority members in the U.S. House, you don't have a lot of stroke, so to say, in this town. The one thing you are allowed to do is to populate your own committees. Jim Banks leads the largest caucus in the Republican conference. Jim Jordan is the ranking member of our Judiciary Committee. And I'm really, I agree with what Leader McCarthy did. And I don't think we should participate in something when the majority or the Speaker of the House is going to determine who serves on the committee for the minority.
Well, and here's the hitch and the giddy up for me. But while I don't disagree with you on, picking your own committee, 2 points there for me. Number one, it feels as though there was almost a strategy, knowing that Jim Jordan wouldn't be picked because of his attitude on these committees, that if, in fact, he was rejected, that then the Republican side of the caucus could pull the pin. And so I have to ask you, was this a direct strategy to put him on there so that you didn't have to serve?
Absolutely not. We had meetings in preparation. I have served with Jim for 2 years during the Mueller investigation and 2 impeachments. Chairman or ranking member Banks had already been in contact with the chair of the committee, Benny Thompson. We were preparing. We were ready to go. And to be quite honest, we thought we were ready to go because there were reports that we were good. And at the, I don't know what you want to call it, 11th hour, last minute, Speaker Pelosi unilaterally decided to kick them both off the committee.
The two Republicans that are serving now, the two that stepped up and said, all right, I'll be on this committee, have been labeled by your leader McCartney, as Pelosi Republicans. Were you happy when he said that, and do you agree with him?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with how he said it, but I mean, Speaker Pelosi is the one who put them on the committee. I've been pretty adamant. I think that and I've said this even regarding when Liz Cheney was conference chair. I mean, they're elected by a constituency. They serve in the U.S. House of Representatives, and they have every right to do whatever they want. But I don't think they're going to bring a lot of credibility to essentially half the country when their service on the committee is determined by Speaker Pelosi.
When did Liz Cheney in your caucus become anywhere close to what Leader McCartney would label as a Pelosi Republican? I mean, the Liz Cheney I know and have met is about as conservative as you can get. I mean, at what point did she become this person that the caucus no longer, for lack of a better way of putting it, respects?
Well, I don't know about the whole caucus. I respect Liz. I like Liz. I voted to keep Liz on as conference chair the first time. I did vote against her the second time. And we could go into that probably at another radio interview. But it's some of it's about the position, and obviously President Trump plays a huge role in that, and support for President Trump. But some of it, just to be honest, is internally and specifically how and when and she does certain things. So
okay, well, it just seems to me that to label her as some sort of Pelosi Republican, that's a major stretch. Anybody who knows how she votes.
Yeah, except when it comes to this committee, that's actually accurate.
Well,
I mean, she was chosen by Speaker Pelosi to be on the committee.
Well,
listen, I mean, fundamentally what I'm really concerned about, and this is what I'm concerned about. Every time Speaker Pelosi uses the word unprecedented, every single time it galvanizes more power in her office. And that I can go through the metal detectors, proxy voting, all of these different issues. And what I'm really concerned about is I don't think win, lose, or draw in the next election cycle, I don't think Speaker Pelosi is going to be here. But I think a lot of her decisions are going to have long-term consequences for this town and how the people's house works.
Well,
and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, but I think we can say that about everyone, McConnell, and that's the thing about politics. Let me ask you this. I know you weren't on the committee, and you just gave your reason why. But did you watch the testimony of those 4 law enforcement officers to the committee?
I watched the whole thing.
So,
and by that, I missed about 8 minutes in the middle because I was doing a bipartisan criminal justice reform event. Okay. But I watched almost the whole thing.
What was your take on it, Congressman?
All right. So they obviously have every right to tell their story. They should. You and I have talked. I was on the floor that day. I don't have any time for people who want to minimize what happened that day. I thought they were compelling. I thought they were obviously very emotional. They had every right to be emotional. All of those things are true. I think there's a deficiency in how we do congressional hearings in general, but I think particularly in this one, there was a really big one. When Representative Liz Cheney was questioning Officer Dunn, he made a comment, and it was very clear. And he said, we were woefully unprepared that day. And after 3 hours, because outside of all of their emotion and everything, there's over 4 decades of tactical experience sitting at that table. And not a single person followed up on that question. Not one. Not from either party, not from either side. There was never a follow-up question to that question.
Well, you could have if you were in the room.
That's really unfortunate.
But, Congressman, you could have if you were in the room.
Absolutely, I could have if I was in the room. I wanted to be in the room, but I'm not going to serve in a committee when they're going to deal with, when they're going to determine what members of the Republican Party are on that committee.
See, to me, if this committee ignores how the House was prepared, it didn't do its job. I'm completely comfortable with that. If there were indicators, if Speaker Pelosi didn't have the security that needed to be there, that has to be part of the conversation. Totally agree with that.
And I want to be clear about that too. We do in politics is what it is. But how the Capitol board is made up and those types of issues, I mean, that's one of the frustrating things we were preparing for already before going in there. Chairman Thompson said absolutely everything's on the table. And then he also had a statement within like 48 hours saying that the Speaker's office was off limits, essentially. And that was what was going to be frustrating. But we should be looking at all of it. I mean, all of it. And if they do that, I mean, we'll see. Like I said, but I also think this. Sometimes we try to pretend Congress is something it's not. And this will go to Adam Schiff, who's on the committee, Jamie Raskin, who's on the committee, Jim Jordan, who wasn't brought on the committee. These aren't courtrooms. They've never been courtrooms. A congressional hearing is never an impartial and unbiased place to do that. It's never, ever been designed to be those things. So I get a little frustrated when I served for 2 years on impeachment with Congressman Raskin. I spent 2 months in the SCIF with Representative Schiff, and they come out and they act like this is some somber, solemn affair. And that's not how these work. I think we should embrace how congressional hearings work. That doesn't mean you can't have good hearings. It's just you need everybody. I think it's a political fiction we make up in D.C. that the American people don't buy.
Those 4 law enforcement officers weren't acting, though. I mean, they weren't there for political purposes. No. They didn't show some card that said I was a Democrat, and they said, okay, now you're the one that gets to testify. I mean, they were just there telling the truth.
I agree. I mean, they were there testifying. That absolutely, and I will never, ever listen. If it wasn't for the heroism of some law enforcement officers on the Capitol and some quick thinking, I mean, and I watched it happen in real time. They have every right to have that platform to tell their story.
Yeah.
You will never get any criticism from me on that.
Congressman, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the infrastructure package. A lot of things going on beside this, of course. So if you could, he said he'd give us more time. Let's do it. Congressman Kelly Armstrong is with us, North Dakota's lone U.S. congressman, and we were talking about the committee that's taking a look at what happened January 6th, but now we're going to sag a little bit if we can. Congressman, I want to talk about the infrastructure package, close to $1 trillion. There seems to be bipartisan support. North Dakota's two senators voted for it in the Senate. Does it have your support in the House?
I haven't seen it yet. I have really good staff, so they found me like a pirated summary of it. So I was actually going through it. I was just reading about at least the summary on the Missouri River snowpack portion of it. I think if we get to the point where the pay-fors score out and it's hard infrastructure, it's got a lot of things. Got some permitting reform language in there, which is very similar to bills we've introduced. So I'm very, very much keeping an open mind. I think, and not the least of which reason why is I think this town needs a real bipartisan package, and I think the country could, just from a psychological healing standpoint might be beneficial, not the least of which is you're building on traditional infrastructure. That's not a bad place to be.
Want to talk to you if I can. Before you came on, we had Doug Goring on, Commissioner of Agriculture in North Dakota. We were talking drought. You get a chance to visit with everybody all over the country. I mean, what are conditions like in other places, and do they know what we're up against up here?
Well, actually, unfortunately, they do. And 2 weeks ago, I drove from Dickinson to Whitefish, and until you got about 10 miles east of Glacier, Montana is in the exact same, if not as bad, or even possibly worse as we are. And I think that's a little bit, two things about this drought, Joel, that have been different is one, it started really early. We only had 2 inches of moisture from October to May. And two, like even in 2017, when Southwest North Dakota was droughted out, we were getting feed for cows up by Leeds and Devil's Lake. There's nowhere to go west or south. And if you go east, you're going to southeast Minnesota at the closest, but most likely Iowa. So it's real bad out there.
Yeah. You and I both know there's things in place that you can utilize to help, but it doesn't change a farmer when he drives by and takes a lot of pride in that crop and he's not seeing it.
None whatsoever. And no matter what you do, you can't feed a cow cash.
Yeah.
The farm programs are one thing, but our cattle guys are just getting crushed.
Is there going to be an all-in the halls of Congress against these meat packers? Is there going to be, it sure seems to me that they shouldn't have any constituency out there, that the ranchers are the ones that should. I mean, are you guys ready to pick a fight with these guys?
I've been ready for a long time. Actually, when I served on the antitrust committee, I was hoping the big tech investigation would get over so we could broaden this fight out. I mean, our ag guys do a great job. The committees of jurisdiction for agriculture do a great job, but we need to broaden this out outside of that because it's not just a producer issue. It's a food reliability issue. I'll tell you, at the beginning of COVID, when there was starting to be some supply chain issues, and you and I know there was a fire at a plant in Kansas beforehand, there was a lot of momentum on this, and my concern was it was going to go away. But Dusty Johnson just introduced some legislation. We still have some of those things. We continue to push the antitrust subcommittee of judiciary to take it up. So the momentum hasn't really gone away. We just need to continue to keep the accelerator on the floor and keep pushing everybody.
Well, I hope so. I mean, these guys are getting used. Last question, I promise, but it's played out nationally. You talked to me once about Fisher Sand and Gravel, and you explained the good they do for Dickinson community. They didn't get paid for the wall. In the 30 or 40 seconds, are you going to step in? Are you going to help them get paid for the wall?
I haven't been asked to. I'm not advocating for that anything specifically on that. I do think we should continue to be building the wall again, as going down to the border and at least some barricades there. But when I know my friends, I advocate for them because I believe in them and all of that, but I don't do anything specific out here for those types of things.
Okay. Congressman, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right.